All right, listen up. There are some absolutely brain-melting myths floating around the motorcycle world that have somehow survived decades of being completely, provably, embarrassingly wrong. And the worst part? It's not just normies and cagers believing this stuff. It's riders, experienced riders, people who have been throwing a leg over a bike since before some of you were born, walking around with these myths rattling around in their helmets like a loose bolt you could never find. Today we are going to fix that. 9 myths, dead and buried, let's go. Before we get into it, quick favor. If you've been lurking on this channel for a while and haven't subscribed yet, what are you doing with your life? Hit that subscribe button, smash the like button until your thumb hurts, and drop a comment below telling me which myth you believed the longest. I will absolutely judge you for it, but in a loving and supportive way. Okay. Myths. Let's destroy them. Myth number 1. You need a big bike to be taken seriously. Oh boy, this one. This one right here is responsible for more new riders buying way too much motorcycle and then low-siding in a Walmart parking lot than any other myth in existence. The idea that you need some monstrous leader bike or a big cruiser to earn your place in the motorcycle community is, and I want to be very precise here, complete and utter nonsense. Let me tell you something about small bikes. The people who are genuinely fast, genuinely skilled, and genuinely respected in the riding world, a huge chunk of them cut their teeth on small displacement machines, and a lot of them never fully left. You want to know what's actually impressive? Watching someone absolutely hustle a 300 or 400cc bike through a twisty road. That takes skill. Anyone with enough money and a death wish can twist the throttle on a leader bike and hold on for dear life. That is not skill. That is bravery adjacent to stupidity. There is also the physics argument, which I love bringing up because it makes me feel smart. A smaller, lighter bike forces you to actually learn how to ride. You learn throttle control, cornering, braking, body position, all of it, because you have to actually think about what you are doing. On a big, heavy bike with mountains of torque, the bike does a lot of the work for you, and your bad habits get buried under all that power until one day they surface at the worst possible moment. Marc Marquez, one of the greatest motorcycle racers who has ever lived, has said repeatedly that riding small bikes made him the rider he is. The man won a MotoGP World Championship in his rookie season at 20 years old. You think he is worried about whether his bike is big enough to impress people at the local coffee shop meetup? He is not. Ride the bike that matches your skill level. Ride the bike that is fun for you. The only people gatekeeping based on engine size are people who probably should not be giving out riding advice in the first place. Small bikes are not a consolation prize, they are a legitimate choice, and frankly, they are more fun than people give them credit for. Myth number 2. Loud pipes save lives. Okay, deep breath. I have to be careful here because I know this one is sacred to a certain subset of the riding community, and I respect that. But I also have to tell you the truth, and the truth is that the science on this one is not exactly riding in loud pipes' favor. The theory is simple enough. If your exhaust is loud, cars around you will hear you coming and give you more space. It makes intuitive sense. The problem is that it falls apart pretty quickly when you actually look at how sound works in the real world. Here's the thing nobody wants to talk about. Sound from a loud exhaust projects primarily behind the motorcycle, not to the sides, not in front of you, behind you. So the car that is most likely to actually hear your loud pipes is the one already behind you, already aware of you, already not a threat. The car pulling out of a side street in front of you, the driver turning left across your path, which, by the way, is the #1 cause of motorcycle fatalities in collisions with cars. They are not hearing your pipes until you are already on top of them, if at all. The Hurt Report, which was done back in 1981 and is still one of the most comprehensive studies ever done on motorcycle accidents, found that the primary cause of car versus motorcycle accidents was the failure of drivers to detect and recognize motorcycles in traffic. That is a visibility problem, not an audibility problem. Your pipes are not solving the actual issue. Now look, do I think loud pipes are cool? Absolutely. Do I understand the visceral joy of a properly tuned exhaust note? 100%, I have not made it this far in motorcycle content without developing some feelings about exhaust sounds. But let's call it what it is, which is a style choice that sounds amazing and makes riding more fun, not a safety system. Wear your gear, Ride as if you are invisible. Use your positioning in the lane intelligently. That is what actually saves lives. Myth number 3. Harley Davidsons are unreliable junk. I'm going to say something that might get me canceled in certain corners of the internet, so everybody buckle up. Harley Davidson makes a pretty reliable motorcycle. I know. Put down the pitchforks and just let me finish. This myth has been floating around since roughly forever, and the frustrating thing is that it is actually rooted in real history. Harley went through a genuinely catastrophic period in the 1970s when the company was owned by AMF, which stands for American Machine and Foundry, a company whose primary claim to fame was making bowling equipment. They were out here building motorcycles in between manufacturing bowling balls, and it showed. Quality control was absolutely in the toilet. Bikes were leaking oil straight from the factory floor, breaking down with impressive regularity, and generally conducting themselves in a way that gave riders every right to be furious. Those grievances were legitimate, and the people who lived through that era earned their opinions the hard way. But here's the thing about a bad reputation. It has an incredible shelf life, way longer than it deserves. Harley-Davidson was bought back by a group of its own employees in 1981, which is honestly one of the better comeback stories in American manufacturing history, and they spent the next several decades methodically rebuilding both the product and the brand, and it worked. The Milwaukee 8 engine they introduced in 2017 is a properly engineered, well-sorted power plant that bears absolutely zero resemblance to the AMF era. Disasters people are still referencing like they happened last Tuesday. Fit and finish on modern production bikes is genuinely good. These are not the same motorcycles your uncle was cursing at in his driveway in 1978. Now, I am not going to sit here and tell you Harleys are cheap to own, because they are not. Parts cost more than comparable Japanese alternatives, maintenance intervals at a dealership will make your wallet physically recoil, and the dealership experience itself is, let's say, its own unique journey that I do not have time to get into today. But expensive is a completely different conversation from unreliable. One means it costs you money on a schedule. The other means it leaves you stranded on the side of a highway questioning your life choices. Modern Harleys are firmly in the first category. The people still calling Harleys unreliable junk in the current era are either carrying 40-year-old information they never updated, or they have an agenda. And neither of those is a good reason to let a myth keep breathing. Update your talking points. The AMF era is over. It has been over for a very long time. Myth number 4. Sport bikes are the most dangerous motorcycles. This one is interesting because it feels true on the surface, and that is exactly what makes it so sticky. You see some guy on a fully fared leader bike absolutely pinned on a public road, doing speeds that would make a traffic cop's head rotate 360 degrees, and your brain just goes, yeah, that checks out. Sport bikes are dangerous. And look, in that specific situation, at those specific speeds, on a public road with cross traffic and speed bumps and people pulling out of driveways, yes, extremely dangerous. Nobody is arguing otherwise, but that is not actually the myth we are busting here. The myth is that sport bikes are categorically, inherently, universally, always the most dangerous type of motorcycle, regardless of context, rider skill, or situation. And that is where the picture gets a whole lot more complicated than the internet wants it to be. The Insurance Institute for Highway Safety has done research that does show supersport motorcycles carrying higher fatality rates than other categories. That is a real statistic, and I am not going to pretend it does not exist. But here is what that statistic is not telling you on its own. When you actually dig into the data and look at who is buying supersport motorcycles, a massively disproportionate number of them are younger, less experienced riders who are buying the most powerful, highest performance machine available to them before they have built the skill set to manage it. And then, because they are young and the bike is fast and the temptation is sitting right there under their right hand, they find out what it can do at the worst possible time. That is not a sport bike problem. That is a skill gap problem wearing a sport bike's clothing. The machine did not make that decision. The rider did. And while we are looking at statistics honestly, can we talk about cruisers for a second? Big, heavy, low-slung cruisers that everyone pictures Grandpa riding serenely down some sun-drenched coastal highway. Those bikes have their own significant accident numbers that simply do not get the same dramatic media coverage because a cruiser going down in a parking lot does not carry the same visual punch as a sport bike incident. But a 500-pound cruiser with a high center of gravity, ridden by someone who has never properly developed their slow-speed maneuvering skills, dropping in a tight turn or a gas station exit, that happens constantly, and it is genuinely dangerous. It just does not fit the narrative, so nobody talks about it. Here's the actual answer, the one that does not make for a dramatic headline but happens to be true. The most dangerous motorcycle is the one you do not yet have the skill level to ride. Full stop. A sport bike in experienced, trained, properly geared hands is not inherently more likely to hurt you than anything else on two wheels. Respect the machine. Build the skills first. Do not let a category's reputation make your decisions for you. Myth number 5. You don't need gear for short rides. Yes, the short ride myth. The greatest lie we tell ourselves in this hobby, delivered in a rotating cast of flavors. Just going down the street, just popping to the shops. Just a quick blast around the block to hear the exhaust note. I'll be fine. It's literally 5 minutes. Famous last words, every single one of them spoken by writers throughout history, moments before the universe decided to make a point. Let me hit you with a fact that nobody in this hobby wants to sit with. The overwhelming majority of motorcycle accidents happen close to home on familiar roads during short trips. The Hurt Report, which remains one of the most comprehensive studies ever conducted on motorcycle accidents, found that most crashes happened within the first 15 minutes of a ride. 15 minutes. Not on some epic mountain pass 3 hours from home. Not on an unfamiliar road in the rain at midnight. Within 15 minutes of leaving, on roads the rider probably knew like the back of their hand. And that right there is exactly the problem. You want to know why those first 15 minutes are so dangerous? Because that is when your brain is least engaged with the actual act of riding. You are not warmed up mentally. You are thinking about whatever you were thinking about before you got on the bike. You are on autopilot on a road you have ridden 100 times before, and you have stopped genuinely looking at it. You have started assuming instead of observing. And assumptions on a motorcycle have a spectacular way of ending your afternoon very abruptly. Familiarity does not make a road safer. It makes you pay less attention to it. Those are two very different things, and conflating them has been putting riders on the pavement since the first motorcycle was invented. Here's another thing the short ride myth conveniently ignores. The road does not know your itinerary. The guy who runs the stop sign because he is reading a text does not first check whether you are planning a long ride or a short one before he pulls out in front of you. The patch of gravel sitting in the apex of that corner you have taken 1,000 times is not going to move itself out of your way because you are only popping out for coffee. Asphalt does not negotiate. At 30 kilometers an hour, unprotected skin meets the road surface with the same brutal indifference whether you are planning a 10-minute errand or a 10-hour tour. Road rash is road rash. Broken bones are broken bones. A collarbone does not care how far from home it happened. Now look, I understand the excuses because I have personally auditioned every single one of them at some point in my riding life. Gearing up takes time. It is hot. It is genuinely uncomfortable to suit up fully for a 5-minute ride. I get it. But ATGAT, all the gear, all the time. Every single ride. No exceptions, no negotiations, no compromises. It is not a suggestion. It is the decision made by riders who would very much like to keep their skin exactly where it currently is. Myth number 6. Motorcycles are always cheaper than cars. Oh, this one. This sweet, beautiful, tragically incorrect myth that has lured countless people into the hobby with the promise of savings and then slowly revealed itself to be absolutely hilarious in retrospect. Yes, the initial purchase price of a motorcycle is usually lower than a car. Yes, fuel economy is generally better. Yes, insurance for a basic bike is often cheaper. These things are true, and I will not take them from you. But what the motorcycle math conveniently leaves out is everything else. Tires. Motorcycle tires wear faster than car tires, cost nearly as much per tire despite being smaller, and you are running them at the edge of their performance envelope in a way car drivers simply are not. A rear tire on a sport bike ridden enthusiastically might last you 4,000 or 5,000 kilometers. Your car tires? $40,000. Do that math slowly. Then there's gear. A decent helmet, jacket, gloves, pants, and boots will run you anywhere from $500 to several $1,000s, depending on how much you value your continued existence. Cars come with safety systems built in. You are the safety system on a motorcycle, and safety systems cost money. Then there is the upgrade cycle. Oh, the upgrade cycle. It starts innocently. Maybe some bar end mirrors, a slip-on exhaust because, well, it sounds better, a quick shifter because you read about it and now you need one, a second bike because the first one is great for commuting but you want something more fun on weekends, a third bike because you found an incredible deal and it would have been rude not to buy it, and suddenly you are looking at your bank account like a person who has made some choices. Motorcycling can be done cheaply. It genuinely can. But the myth that it is automatically and always cheaper than car ownership is one that the hobby loves to tell itself, and the numbers do not always back it up. Myth number 7. You have to be mechanical to own a motorcycle. This one actually puts people off getting into riding altogether, and that drives me absolutely crazy, because it is just not true. The idea is that motorcycles are these temperamental, complicated machines that require you to be some kind of wrench-wielding savant just to keep them running. And look, if you want to do all your own maintenance, that is genuinely awesome. Learning to work on your bike is one of the most satisfying parts of the ownership experience, and it will save you money over time. But it is not a prerequisite for riding. Modern motorcycles, particularly anything built in the last 15 to 20 years, are incredibly reliable machines with service intervals that are measured in thousands of kilometers. Basic maintenance like chain lubrication, tire pressure checks, and oil changes are straightforward enough that a person who has never touched a wrench in their life can learn them in an afternoon from YouTube, which, given that you are on YouTube right now, seems like a resource you might have access to. For anything beyond the basics, that is what dealerships and independent motorcycle shops are for. You do not change the oil in your car yourself necessarily. You are not rebuilding your car's suspension every season. You take it to a mechanic. Motorcycles work exactly the same way. The mechanical intimidation factor is real, but it is mostly in your head, and it should not be the thing standing between you and two wheels. Myth number 8. Older bikes are less safe. This one has a kernel of truth wrapped in a whole lot of oversimplification, which is honestly my favorite kind of myth to break down. Yes, modern motorcycles have technology that older bikes simply do not have. ABS, traction control, cornering ABS, riding modes, lean-sensitive electronics, all of it is genuinely impressive and genuinely useful. If you put a brand new electronically sophisticated superbike next to a 1985 version of itself, the new bike wins on safety technology by a country mile. That part is not a myth. But here is where the myth part comes in. The primary safety factor on any motorcycle in any era is the rider. A skilled, attentive, properly geared rider on a 1992 Honda CB 750 is going to have a safer riding career than a sloppy, inattentive, ungeared rider on a fully modern machine with every electronic aid known to man. Technology assists good riding. It does not replace it, and it does not fix fundamental skill deficits. Older bikes also have some practical advantages people overlook. They are simpler, which means less to go wrong and easier to work on when something does. They are lighter, in many cases. They are more communicative, meaning you can feel more of what the bike is doing through your inputs, which some experienced riders actually prefer. And they are often significantly cheaper, which means you can spend that saved money on training and gear, which is where the real safety improvements come from anyway. An older bike that is mechanically sound and matched to your skill level is not a compromise. It is a perfectly legitimate choice. Myth number 9. Once you learn, riding is easy. And here it is, the big one. The myth that I genuinely believe is responsible for more experienced rider accidents than almost anything else on this list. Because the danger of this myth is not that it kills beginners. Beginners are scared and cautious, and they know they do not know things. The danger is what it does to riders with a few years under their belt who start to feel like they have figured it out. Riding never becomes easy. It becomes more comfortable. It becomes more intuitive. Your responses become faster and more automatic. But easy? No. What happens when riders start to think of it as easy is that they stop paying the attention it requires. They get comfortable on roads they know. They start to relax on familiar bikes in familiar conditions. And that is precisely when riding punishes you, because the road is never the same twice, and neither are the conditions, and neither is your own mental state on any given day. The best riders in the world, people who have spent careers at the absolute limit of what motorcycles can do, talk about riding as a discipline that requires constant engagement and constant learning. Valentino Rossi did not win 9 world championships by deciding at some point that he had learned everything there was to know. He was still analyzing data, still working with coaches, still trying to find tenths of a second right up until he retired. That is the mindset that keeps you alive and keeps you progressing on the street. There is always a corner you have not seen before, always a surface you have not encountered, always a situation that your experience has not prepared you for yet. The moment you start thinking of riding as something you have mastered is the moment you stop giving it the respect it deserves. And motorcycles have a very particular way of reminding you when you have stopped paying attention, and it is not gentle. Keep taking courses. Keep reading about technique. Keep watching riders who are better than you and asking yourself why they are doing what they are doing differently. Ride with humility. Ride with focus. And never ever make the mistake of thinking that experience alone makes you safe. All right, 9 myths, all of them thoroughly stomped into the ground where they belong. Look, the motorcycle community is genuinely incredible. The people in it, the culture around it, the sheer joy of what we do, there is nothing else quite like it. But we do ourselves no favors by letting bad information live rent-free in our heads and pass it along to new riders like it is gospel. If you took one thing from this video, let it be this. Question what you think you know. Not in a paranoid way, but in the way of a person who takes riding seriously and wants to keep getting better at it for a very long time. If this video helped you out, smash that like button, subscribe if you have not already, and share this with a rider in your life who needs to hear some of this. I read every single comment, so drop your thoughts down below and let me know which myth burned you personally. I will not judge you. Much. Catch you in the next one. Ride safe out there. Rubber side down. Fact: there are an estimated 600 million motorcycles in use worldwide, and approximately 0 of their riders believe they are the problem. Goodbye.